Okay, good afternoon. Still banging on about a non-metaphorical values-free space. So when we use the term space, we can talk about, or we are talking about, an area of a shared space, like a workspace, but not a physical workspace, but a current topic that everyone's talking about on the team or whatever, or just general conversation. But a values-free space, I suppose, limits that conversation because conversation typically carries value. But in my instance of values-free space, it's really the challenge of Kant, particularly producing this space on the back of bracketing metaphysics, and as I've pointed out, quite unusual. So transcendental space, in which Kant concerns himself with, first of all, the categories of space and time. So that space and time, they're a feature of our subjectivity as much as they are something empirical, something of the real world. But also in that you've got, as part of the 12 categories, I think it is, you've got cause in there and you've got necessity in there, I think, even though really the discussion is around, the discussion of transcendental categories relies on necessity, so it's also a presupposition in Kant's logic. But then necessity as a concept defines logic anyway. So I don't think that's an issue. It's more the content, isn't it? That he is capable or claims to be able to speak of an area of mind, a particular area of mind. So this is non-empirical, non-psychological, but more about the structure of mind on the basis of necessity. So this is how minds or subjects are necessarily going to be. It would be interesting to compare this with a Nietzschean form of, or concept of, disposition. So in Nietzsche you've got this hierarchy of individuals, and perhaps the earliest forms of difference and diversity in a conceptual sense are these elite forms of those concepts. So that's a bit of an irony. But anyway, to compare Kant, I suppose, and avoid the idea, I mean, he gives you a whole empiricism anyway. I mean, it's not as if he ignores the empirical. But the focus is on the subject and the transcendental. And so how does he do it? Does it basically by bracketing metaphysics, presenting a logic, and then from there conducting discussion of these categories, a table of categories, 12 from memory, that are the basis of our mind in relation to reality. So the basis of any possibility of an empirical subject or disposition or experience even. So fascinating, very fascinating area of philosophy, and for the student drawn to Kant, they're going to get the benefit of that. I mean, it's quite a bit of work it's all laid out nicely. It's very well presented, and you can see as an early piece of work how that categorization and handling in tables, all that, let's say, logical content, if I can smash those two words together, that is given or said to be part of or within a transcendental space. So for me, of course, I'm working on this transcendental space because my argument is the transcendental deduction at the core of the critique of pure reason is in error, that it's not a deduction that's correct, that our subject and object relationship, conceptual relationship, is one of seduction rather than one of deduction. Now, insofar as we're not talking about empirical issues, it's of note that I'm also just within that very transcendental space also. So what critiques there are of that space are also critiques of transcendental seduction. But then transcendental seduction is that, a critique of that transcendental space. But that's not, to acknowledge it, to acknowledge that space in some sense is not just to acknowledge the writings of Kant, but really to be satisfied that those writings refer to something. And as I have noted, subjectivity, particularly in that 2016 video, that early video, where I was asking after the value of subjectivism, which really just points up the use value of the concept of subjectivity for me. And why? Well, at least half of Kant's work's dedicated to it. So he may well be a philosopher and objectivist, but he is more than that. He is a subjectivist. Anyway, regardless, I think subjectivism in the frame is not going anywhere soon. We move from subjectivity to fractured subjectivity, which is, I suppose, a different way of accounting for metaphysics. So once you're satisfied with the historical movement or progress of rational practice with concepts, you make this move from metaphysics to fractured subjectivity. So metaphysics, in a sense, is a fractured subjectivity. So late rational practice identifies metaphysics for what it is, and I think I took another term previously, noting that metaphysics is like the historical form of ontology. So that's another route out. So turn of the 18th century, you've got these two routes opening up: metaphysics, at least metaphysics as rational rather than theological, and then the existential route. So same in 20th century, you've got Heidegger's route via ontology, and his candidate for ontology being as one route out of whatever practice was critiqued at the time. And then there's this fractured subjectivity, which I can't really give you the source for that noun and adjective and noun, fractured subjectivity. I suppose it just comes with the talk of learning all this stuff during the 90s, and really at the peak of post-modernity in academia. Anyway, I'm rambling now, so